this is not about any of these books that I have written before. Management 3.0 is a book that maybe some of you recognize. How to Change the World is a little book that I wrote about changing organizations. It is free, by the way. You can just get it by going to this URL, subscribe to my mailing list, download the book, and unsubscribe. Okay? Easy. Easy. Anyone can do that. Yeah. And the last one is Managing for Happiness. I wrote that two years ago. But this is not about any of that. This is about the new stuff that I'm working on. So first of all, something very important. Wherever I go, I'd like to share my favorite music from that specific country. So this is my French top 3. And this is, no, you will not see Charles Aznavour, you will not see Edith Piaf, something much, much better, okay? This is my number 3 best song that ever came out of France. I love this. It's so awesome. So this is from the 80s, of course. It was part Caribbean, part French, but that's one of my favorite songs. And then, of course, the number 2. Yes, you were born. Oh, I love that. So, and he was touring around America, and he had a background singer, very unknown singer called Madonna or something like that, who became much more famous afterwards. But then my best song ever, the best song ever that came out of France, they can play this at my funeral, I swear. It's this one, right? I love it. Oh, it's so beautiful. Voyage. Okay, so you can guess what period was my favorite era. That was the 80s of last century. And I have a picture here that shows how much has changed in the music industry in the last couple of decades. Over here, we were talking music cassettes and long play albums, etc. I had a cassette, a Sony Walkman on the side, 13 songs on each side, right? You had to turn around. Oops, tape got stuck. Pinky finger, get it back into the cassette. That's how old I am. But then lots of things changed. CDs became big, slightly proud of that. Philips played a big role, Dutch company. In that technology, but then something happened in 1999. Does anyone know what happened in 1999? Sorry? Yeah, no, not the iPod, later. Napster. Napster happened, yes. The iPod happened here, early 2000s. Napster, illegal downloads of music. Oh my God, the industry was collapsing. And then the iTunes and Spotify. So a lot of change in the music industry, and it is the same in many other kinds of industries. Actually, there's a famous book, The Innovators Dilemma, which talks about this. It goes on in many industries. All this change. And often you have these leaders in an industry, like in the music industry, it was Universal, Sony, Warner, and Philips with their CD production and everything. And they were improving things over time. CDs did get better, but then the young disruptors, the startups, they started with technology that was worse. The music that you downloaded through Napster that had low bit rates and you had to wait for an hour, and then it was the wrong album. Oh my God. But the downloading was so much fun. It was instant gratification, basically. And then that evolved faster. And this is called the Innovators Dilemma. How can we be both? How can we be the leaders in an industry and we have our current business models and we want to optimize for them and we need some centralization and we need to be efficient because we have competitors and everything over there that is for the current existing business. At the same time, we also want to be like the startups. We want to be disruptive, new products, new ideas. We want to explore and disrupt and decentralize. How can we do both? One person said to me, Jurgen, if you solve this problem, you're going to be a billionaire. Because they all struggle with this problem. They all struggle with this. And the question is basically, how can we be like a startup? How can we have a startup culture, but without giving up our scale-up culture? We wanted both. The British would say we want to have our cake and eat it at the same time, right? So how can we do that? And I'm sure some of you know some of these pictures, Safe and Less and Holacracy and Spotify model and X-Scale and DAD and lots of stuff out there. Very interesting frameworks and models, but none of them solve the Innovators Dilemma. None of them tell you how you can be like a big company and at the same time have startups in the organization together. Yeah. They don't solve that problem. But I have solved the problem. I'm going to be a billionaire. Ooh, I look forward to that. The solution to the problem is over here. I will reveal the solution one by one. Actually, of course, I stole the ideas from other sources. I will be very honest about that. Everything is already out there. I will tell you what it is. Let's first have a look at the disruptors. So let's have a look at the disruptors. I went around Europe and spoke with Spotify. I spoke with Flixbus in Berlin. I spoke with Brainly in Krakow and Taxify. And I asked them, what are you doing? How are you making sure that you grow fast, but be like a business and like a startup? So what I found out is that that is very common in startup and scale-up culture to talk about the stages of the business, the life cycle stages. Stage one is the business model is just an idea.
iPod, 1,000 songs in your pocket.
1,000 songs in your pocket. Wasn't that amazing back then? I had just 25 songs in my pocket. I was like, 1,000, whoa. And now we have 1 billion songs in our pocket. They were like, well, doesn't have my favorite album. Well, we got used to it. But that's the first stage. Someone has an idea. In this case, Steve Jobs thought he could do that, and he did. Bless you. Stage two is expedition. Then we try to figure out if the problem is making sense to someone. Is it worth solving this problem? Many startups skip this stage. They get right to implementation, making code and whatnot. That happened, I think, a lot in the blockchain cryptocurrency world, where people had ideas and they immediately started coding without checking, is this problem worth solving? You know. So that's what you should do in this next stage. They call it problem-solution fit in startup language. Does the solution I have in mind solve somebody's problem? You can test for that. You can run tests without making an actual product. For example, suppose you have an idea of a new coffee bar. I love coffee. I will talk about coffee every now and then, so forgive me for that. So suppose someone has an idea of a new coffee bar in a certain street, and well, that would be a great place to open a coffee bar. Should you open the coffee bar then? No, you should run a test. Is that a good street to open a coffee bar? You could run a test, for example, with a trolley. You just go there with a trolley that is very simple, mobile, and then sell coffee there in the street, and then measure how many coffees you can sell. So that was an indication of the throughput that you have in the street. They call that a minimal viable product, by the way, of the low fidelity type. It is actually fake. It's not the real coffee bar, but it is a test. So this is a lean experiment template, by the way. There are plenty of them. This is my own version. So I'm going to test the best location for my new coffee bar. I believe the location is in Side Street, for example. I'm going to sell coffee from a mobile coffee cart, and I will fail when I sell fewer than 50 coffees in one day. I can test that. That's a simple test. I actually know someone who had a coffee cart like that in Brussels, and they tested several streets, and then they ended up in a sweet spot right between a student campus and a metro station. That was like the golden place to be. So that was, they found out through testing. Stage 3 is formation. Now you found problem solution fit. Now it is worth spending money on making the actual product. You will need a team for that. You will need funding for that. We call that vision founders fit. You need to mobilize the right team members and get funding from maybe from external investors or from your own manager or whatever, but now we go in full force. Stage 4 is validation. They call that product market fit. can you make a product that actually fits the market? Because people might be interested in your solution, but if they're not really buying it, then you have a problem. Right? So you have to make a product that really works. They call that product market fit. And at Apple, they also did a lot of testing. All of the testing was done internally, of course, but the best approach would be for most people to do that testing with actual real clients, real customers. And then suppose you have tested your product, MVPs all the way, minimal viable products, and people are buying your product like crazy, even if it's still a sort of a unfinished prototypey versions. Are you then ready to scale up? No. The number one problem I heard in my conversations with those managers around Europe and from the articles I read is the number one reason startups fail is they scale up too soon. They scale up too fast. They're not ready for it. If you did things well, then you faked everything in the back end. You just have a product that works for the customer, but in the back end, everything is manual. The team goes nuts with all the technical debt and systems that are not integrated yet and everything. You have to finish that. You need business market fit. Finish the rest of the business before you go and scale everything up. So those are the first 5 stages. That's like the kid years, the young years of the business model, where it was just a child. Now it is growing up. The pictures, by the way, are my mother. This is my mother becoming a teenager. You see from the look in her eyes that she found new possibilities as a teenager. Oh, suddenly everything changed. And that's the same for a business model. When it is a teenager, when it starts accelerating, it's going to be treated as an adult. Now it will be play with the big ones out there. And we can call it growth, we call it acceleration. And growth hacking is a practice, for example, that we can do in this stage. I made the mistake of sending my team to a growth hacking class a year ago, and that was stupid. Because my startup was still in product market fit stage. We were trying to make the product work. But growth hacking, our concept of growth hacking is tweaking lots of things like different text, different colors, the placement of the buttons, and always measuring what effect does it have. Does this increase our conversion rate? Does it increase retention, etc.? But if your product is doing 0, then multiplying by 1,000 is still 0, right? So growth hacking makes no sense in the product market fit stage. That's something that I had to learn as a founder. It makes sense when it works and when it is 1, and then you can multiply it by 1,000. That's what growth hacking is for. Multiplying what already is working quite well. And then the last couple of stages, this gets a bit more boring. You are now the established company, a business in a certain industry, and you're the leader, like the iPod was in the music devices industry. 8 is expansion, trying to stay relevant, midlife crisis, trying to stay young with colorful clothes and everything. If you see a product appear in 16 colors, you know the end is in sight, basically. They ran out of ideas, right? What more can we do with our product? Oh, let's make a pink and a blue version. Oh, what a great idea, what a great idea. And we'll launch that one too. So yeah, that's stage 8, expansion, new feature, more features, new territories. Where can we grow? And then stage 9 is conservation. The business model is in decline. It is probably just costing us money at this point, keeping us alive, because people are going away. It's not working well anymore. We just have to pay to keep it running. This is the senior citizens in our company, basically, in terms of business models. And then stage 10, we decide, okay, this is it. It's time to stop it. Euthanasia on our product, and basically, well, let's stop it. We will get all our customers off-boarded and onboarded on a newer family member. So these are the 10 stages that are quite common among products and services. They are a pattern, so to speak. The differences are in the details. Not every product or service is the same, but you get the idea. That is quite normal life cycle. And you can see that this has played out for the iPod. Anyone still using an iPod? Anyone? No hands going up? No. Yeah, it's dead. It's officially dead now. Okay. So it was a big success in the early 2000s. The first couple of stages, that was internal experimentation, stage 1, 2, 3, 4, and then stage 5, stage 6, it started scaling rapidly. Stage 7, we are now the market leaders, woohoo! And then stage 8, oh my God, what do? Let's make a pink version. And then 9, 10, and it's dead. By the way, you can see at the top of the sales of the iPod, it was 40% of income of Apple was iPod sales, right? 40%, that's quite a lot. Does anyone know how much the iPhone is now in terms of Apple's revenue? What percentage of Apple's revenue is from the iPhone business model? Sorry? 50 more. 60 more. Almost 70%, I heard and I saw in the reports. Nearly 70%, 2/3 of Apple's income is iPhone sales. That's dangerous. In which stage is the iPhone? Yeah, trying to stay relevant, midlife crisis, 16 colors, lots of features. So Apple needs new family members. Well, they have new family members. They have Apple TV Plus and lots of other things, but none of them are make as much money yet as the iPhone does. Now, what I have learned, and this is crucial for understanding and for solving the Innovators Dilemma, is that the rules change depending on the life cycle. So this is a picture of our cute family when I was young, 10 years old. Look at the sexy pants that I had back then. And I was one of the first. Now everyone has them. So I'm always a trendsetter. And this is my little brother, Jurgen, little rascal. Oh, look at his face. He was already planning something devious again. I'm quite sure. He was always like that. So my brother said to my mother that he thought it was not fair that I was allowed to come home, Jurgen was allowed to come home anytime I wanted, but he had to be home at 7 o'clock. It was not fair. Well, my mother said, first of all, Jurgen is in a different life cycle stage. He's 3 years older, so different rules. And second, maybe you get the same rules if I don't have to pick you up from the police station anymore. Oh, I love my little brother. So anyways, different rules in different stages. For example, a concrete example. In the Agile world, Agile community, everyone talks about OKRs, objectives and key results. I'm sure some people in the audience are familiar with this concept. It is a very successful, though slightly complicated, goal-setting framework. Multiple goals and difference between the objectives and the key results, and then everyone does that, and you have to compare and with each other, and it's all transparent. It's wonderful, but it takes 2 weeks for a whole company to just do one goal-setting exercise. You know what I noticed? In the startup world, nobody talks about OKRs. They all talk about the North Star metric. It's a different goal-setting framework, much, much simpler. One metric that rules them all. One thing that the team, the self-organizing startup team, will self-organize around and try to optimize. It could be something for shareholders, like how many daily active users, or what is the monthly recurring revenue, or it could be customer value, like how many minutes of player activity do we have per month per user. Doesn't matter. Choose one, and as a team, that is the thing that matters most. That works well for startups because they need something simple. These are the kids among the business model. You don't give them a complicated OKRs framework. I tried with my team OKRs. It didn't work. We were startups. We were the kids among the business models, right? Things were too chaotic. We needed something simple, like the North Star metric. So it makes sense to have, for example, in the early stages of a life cycle, to do the North Star metric. But once the business model is a success and becomes a teenager, it joins the adults, and then you tell them, now we expect you to do OKRs, like the rest of the adults in the family, right? You can do North Star metric when you're young, when you're a kid, but you're growing up, and then you play with the rest of the adults. Things change over time. So different ages need different practices. That is one of the most important realizations I had. Different life cycle stages of the business model. We should always wonder what product or service is our team working on, and in which stage is it? Is it starting up? Is it scaling up? Is it wildly successful? Is it dying? That is a discussion we need to have in order to pick the right practices from frameworks. So, first key to solving the Innovators Dilemma, use the business lifecycle. Okay? Practices depend on the maturity of the business idea, not the maturity of the team. That's something very different. Right? You could have a highly mature agile team working on a startup idea. Great. Or you could have a very successful business model with a very immature agile team working on it. I'm sure you know some of those. So it's not the same thing. It's the maturity of the business model. Okay, what is the second key? I'm going to talk a bit about the design thinking here. This is one of the most popular design thinking visuals. I'm sure some of you have seen it before. Design thinking is a lot about empathizing with customers, which is a great thing. Just trying to understand what their problems are. And then it is visualized as empathizing, and then defining, ideating, coming up with ideas, prototyping, and then testing. I love it, love it. I love all the design thinking books. I love design thinkers. There's just one thing that I hate, which is this picture. Why? Because it looks linear. Haven't we learned in the Agile community that things should be circular, that it should be iterative? Why does this look like a linear process? It drives me nuts. And then I tell the design thinkers, you are designers, duh. You should be able to draw something that looks circular. It's not that difficult, not that difficult. But if you read the books, they all say, yes, we mean that it is iterative and it is very dynamic process. Well, the picture looks boringly static. Here's another one by the Design Thinking Council. Same linear process. They just use different words. I like this picture better. The Lean Startup movement. Build, measure, learn. It is a circle, thank God. It goes around. It sends the message that it is an iterative process. Good. That's a point earned. But I subtract a point for the lack of half of what is needed. Build, measure, learn. Build what? Where does it come from, what you want to build? Does it just come falling out of the sky? No, the lean startuppers say you have to get out of the building and talk with customers. You can even buy t-shirts that say get out of the building. It's a famous phrase from Lean Startup. But it's not in the picture. That's why I don't like this picture either. It's like half is missing. So I merged the different models, and I love all the Lean Startup and the Lean design thinking stuff. I just think they need a better picture. So here are all the words. They use different words, and that's okay. You see that in the Lean Startup, the last column, half is missing in the picture. The whole empathizing and synthesizing and coming up with hypotheses is missing in the Lean Startup picture. They mean it. It's in the books, but it's not in the drawing. And what is missing in design thinking pictures is the last one. It is learning. That Lean Startup makes an explicit mention for learning after testing. The design thinkers don't mention that. Of course, they mean it, but they don't draw it. I added one at the first row, which is when you empathize with someone, you already made a decision. Which people to empathize with. There are 6 or 7, I lost count, billion people on the planet. We cannot empathize with everyone. We have to make a decision, like, okay, we're going to do this, we're not going to do that. So that is framing or context. So I turned it into a new picture. Looks much better, I think. It's circular. It's circular. And I thought a circle is a stupid word, it's a bit boring, so I looked up in the dictionary what are the synonyms for circle, and then I saw vortex, and I saw, yes, I love the word vortex. It's dynamic, it's like whirlwinds, there are tornadoes, and thermodynamics, etc. So I like that. It sends the message that everything can happen at the same time. You don't have to go through a process step by step by step. No, design thinkers say, oh, our work is a complete mess. We do everything the whole week. There's not discrete steps. That's okay. I'll give you 2 examples, and we can see where we can map them. So the jobs to be done framework. Clayton Christensen, who wrote The Innovators Dilemma, also wrote about the jobs to be done. He said it is very, very important to understand what is the problem you're actually solving. Very often customers are not able to tell you. You have to look at their behavior. That's what design thinkers also say. You have to empathize with them. Don't ask them what they want, just see what they need. Yeah. So what I need from a coffee bar, for example, is not just good coffee. What I want is working Wi-Fi, a comfortable chair, and coffee that is good enough to tweet about. And those 3 all have to be in place, and then I will like your cafe. If you have standing room only, I will not buy your coffee, even if it's the best one in Paris. I will not buy it, because I need to sit with my computer. Right? So that is the job to be done for me. Give me a nice place. Starbucks solved this problem, and they called it the 3rd place. They actually had a name for it. People need a 3rd place between home and their work, something to sit and work and relax and have coffee. So that is the job to be done. Where does that sit in the framework? Well, clearly in empathizing, synthesizing area, that part of the model. For you, the right side, the pink-red part of the model. That is what you do with the job to be done framework. And it will change over time. The older the business model gets, the different practices you will need in order to keep understanding what is the job to be done here for our customers. I'll give you another example. Another is journey maps, a fascinating practice from service design. It is basically drawing a picture of the ideal experience of a customer with your product or service. You can make a map of that. Say, well, for example, when I go and find coffee, I usually start on Google Maps. Right? I start on Google Maps, I type coffee, highest rated, sort by distance, open now, and then I get a list. And then I go to the first one that mentions barista or self-ground coffee or whatever, 20-minute walk, all right, there we go. And I go walk and I find a new coffee place. So that's the first touch point on the journey map is Google Maps. Many coffee bars don't understand that because then I walk for 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and I arrive there, no coffee bar. Oh, what the f, right? That's a what the F moment. It's not a wow moment. Someone did not take care of their address details on Google Maps. Okay, I'll find another one. 10 minutes, please. I really want my coffee now. So I walk, next one. Close for the holidays. Oh. Okay, next one. Starbucks, anything is fine. Just give me my coffee. So I walk for 5 minutes. I arrive at a cafe, and it looks great. And there are people sitting there with computers. All right, looks, they have Wi-Fi. That's awesome. Comfortable chairs. I order my Cafe Latte, and when I get my coffee, they give me a Latte Macchiato. Oh, that's another what the F moment. Okay. Now, for those who do not understand coffee, pay attention. This is the most important part of the keynote. Okay, here we go. Over there, on that side, we have the Latte Macchiato, okay? It is an Italian invention. It starts with milk, usually in a glass, hot milk, and then you throw the espresso in. That gives you a stain on the milk. It is stained milk, Latte Macchiato. That's what it means. And that is how Italians teach babies how to drink coffee, basically. You know. Over here on the other side, we have the Cafe Latte. It is an American drink, right? It's not Italian, it's from America, where the Americans thought the cappuccinos that the Italians made were a bit too strong. So what the Italians did was they make the cups bigger and just threw in more milk. So you have the milkier coffee, which is the Cafe Latte. And because the milk comes last, you can make latte art, which is nice. You cannot make latte art with a Latte Macchiato. That's impossible. Maybe you can make espresso art, but it's really difficult. So I order my Cafe Latte, I get a Latte Macchiato, and I tell the barista, that's not a Cafe Latte. That's a Latte Macchiato. And the barista says to me, that's the same thing. Well, then I told the barista, if that's the same thing, then a barista is the same thing as a plumber. You obviously don't care about the order of the fluids in the cup, which is very important, okay, to me. So, coffee with milk is not milk with coffee. That's a very important takeaway of this keynote, okay? So, journey mapping is figuring out these what the F moments and these wow moments, because sometimes I have like amazing coffee and then I tweet it, I put it on Facebook, it's, oh, I'm in love right now, look what they made me, and then I tag the coffee bar, and that's what you want. And I will not do that if they give me a Latte Macchiato. So where does that sit? Over here, of course, in the other side of the circle. You make something and then you test, you sense, what are people doing with my product? How do they respond? What can I learn from that? Etc. That sits on the other side. So, and all of this happens all the time as a team. Even when you start up until the very old age, you have to go through this innovation vortex all the time. Only the practices will change. How exactly you do that? This is a self-assessment test that I created. Where just have a conversation during a retrospective, for example. Are we touching upon all the streams in the vortex? Are we being agile and lean startup and design thinking all at the same time? It's a difficult conversation to have. Now we're going to solve the second part of the Innovators Dilemma, or find the second part of the solution, I mean. The young ones, the kids, they mainly concern themselves with disruptive innovation. They explore, that's the whole point of startups, to come up with new stuff that does not exist before, new business models. While the older ones, the adults, in stage 7 and 8, they make all the money, they mainly execute. But they still learn. I still learn, only not as fast anymore as when I was a kid. I learned much faster. But most of my day, I just execute. I need to support myself and my family and everything. So most of it is execution, but still, there's learning going on. Only the nature of the learning changes. The nature of the innovation changes. The kids do the disruptive stuff. The adults do the sustaining innovation. Try to stay young, try to stay fit as long as we can. But we will give up at some point. So, use the innovation vortex. It gradually shifts from being disruptive to being sustaining if you survive and actually get to those older stages. Now the last part, the last key that you will need. This is an innovation committee, that I was once part of. This is not an actual picture, but it looked a bit like this. This innovation steering committee. We had people submitting ideas in an idea box for new ideas, new innovative ideas. And then the innovation committee looked at the ideas. And that was me with the CTO and somebody else. And we looked at the first idea and we said, that didn't make any sense. The next idea, we cannot afford this great idea, but it's far too expensive. No, we cannot do this. And the third idea, I don't know. We also threw it away. And then, oops, the box was empty. No ideas anymore. And then the employees got demotivated. So we are rejecting all the ideas. And we said, well, you should send better ideas. And yeah, that did not really work. That did not work, that innovation process. In hindsight, I understand we did it completely wrong because we saw it as a pipeline. We saw it as a pipeline of innovation. We thought that once we commit to an idea, we're stuck with it. We have to commit to it and give it all resources and money, etc., until it is an adult and grown up. And oh my God, that sounded very scary, so we did not want to do that. So we rejected everything. We saw it as a pipeline, like a digestive system. Like once it comes in on the one hand, it also has to come out. Like we were excreting innovation, basically. That was what our company was trying to do. And that does not work, because it is a funnel. We have lots of ideas that should start in the beginning, and then stage by stage, this is how the startup scene works, stage by stage, more and more ideas drop off. It's a funnel, not a pipeline. Here's an example of a very different kind of innovation funnel.
Come on, upside, inside out. She's living la vida loca. She'll push and pull you down.
It sounded like 2 3-year-olds who've got flu trying to sing.
I love him. He has insults much better than I can come up with. So Simon Cowell. So this is a better kind of innovation board, an innovation committee, right? They have this program where everyone can start. And then stage by stage, more and more are being kicked out, or they drop off because they cannot compete. It gets better and better based on actual performance, on evidence. They don't write business plans, those candidates, for singing and dancing. No, they actually have to perform. They have to show what they can do. It's the same in the startup scene. That's what investors look for. What can you do? Show us traction, show us retention, show us the money, show us your growth, show us everything. Yeah, you can write a pitch deck, but that's not the most important. We want to see the numbers. What's your North Star metric looking like this week? Show us your performance. And then only a select number gets further and further in the funnel. And the interesting thing is, let's go back to this picture. I know from research that out of the 60 ideas that start at level stage 1, only 1 reaches stage 7. Only 1 out of 60 ideas becomes a profitable business model. The other 59 don't make it. Now, I made the mistake of trying to predict which of the 60 ideas in the idea box is going to be the winner. That's impossible. You cannot do that. You have to set up some kind of program that, based on evidence, all the bad ones are weeded out. And then you will have a winner, but you cannot predict which one it is. So this is new stuff that I'm working on. I call it a Shiftup program. It combines everything, basically, the life cycle stages, the innovation, the vortex, and the funnel. How can we create a program in organizations that allows ideas to grow based on evidence, and how can we help them stage by stage, based on scorecards and everything? How can we change also the kinds of practices that they need? Because what they need as babies, the kinds of practices here, is very different from the practices that they will need as teenagers. It's very different from whatever they do when they become grown-ups and form their own divisions. Still a lot of work to do there. So, create an innovation funnel. Grow your own great game of business. Right? That is the last key to solving the Innovators Dilemma. So how can you have a startup culture, but not losing scale-up culture at the same time? That is basically the summary of the Innovators Dilemma. Do everything, basically, that I told in this, that I told you before. The 3 keys: have a life cycle stages. Do not treat everyone the same in the organization. It depends on the business models that you might need different practices for different stages. And have an innovation vortex. Innovation happens all the time. Only the kind of innovation changes from when the business models are young until they are grown up. But innovate, they will always have to do. And then come up with some kind of program. I heard, for example, in many organizations, they now organize hackathons these days. Oh, great, people have hackathons, and for a whole day they experiment with ideas. And then people complain to me and say, well, after the hackathon, nothing happened. We generated lots of great ideas, but then everything was dead. And now I understand, yes, because there's a program missing. What is the game? Hackathon is great, stage 1. That's a great practice in stage 1. Now, what do you do with the ideas? You need a program for that. That's what the TV channels do with France Got Talent and X Factor, etc. They have an entire program for all the candidates. They just move everyone through the funnel. Now, as I said, none of this is invented by me. All of that stuff is already out there in various books. You just have to do a little bit of digging around because it's not in one place. I found some stuff in Eric Ries' Startup Way, but it's not complete. I found great ideas in the Corporate Startup by Tendai Fiki, and Robert Cooper's Winning at Products. They all have like pieces of the puzzle, and I am just trying to complete the puzzle so that it is more easy to understand. But they all seem to agree with each other. So, back to these frameworks, lots of great ideas, lots of useful stuff in the Spotify model and safe and less. And I complain about the concept of framework every now and then because it's a bit too static as far as I'm concerned. But they're full of good practices, good ideas. I think the next step is we figuring out how do those frameworks depend on life cycle stages. What is different for startups versus scale-ups in the funnel? They need to start recognizing that. I have 3 more slides and now I'll shut up my mouth. Nature solved the Innovators Dilemma a long time ago. They call it species and organisms. Species can live forever, theoretically. They do that by having organisms, individual organisms that start up, scale up, and screw up endlessly, an endless cycle. That's how species survive. That's how they regenerate themselves all the time. So business also has to regenerate itself. The organization is like a species. And the business models are like the organisms that start and that scale up and die endlessly, an endless iteration of life cycles. So the only way not to be disrupted is to disrupt yourself. So go forth and make more babies, okay? That's very important in the organization, to make more babies. So I have a book out, Startup, Scale Up, Screw Up. Sadly, it's not on the bookstore there, but you can order it online or anything, anywhere you want. 2 more QR codes, very important. If you want to be involved with me and my Shiftup program, I'm trying to figure out how to create these innovation factories, these innovation funnels. If you want to be part of that, just sign up to Shiftup-sign-up after the bit.ly URL. You will also get free downloads of 2 chapters of my book and the Lean Experiment template and the Innovation Vortex template. I will give you PDFs. I will give you those as free downloads. So sign up and I will make you part of that community. And then last but not least, please give me a 10. Thank you so much for being here.